Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the McCandless Town Council to order. We'll stand, if we wish, for the invocation by Councilman Mertz and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. President, I'd like to respectfully decline my invocation. I find that it is something that should not be done in this forum. And the state has asked us repeatedly not to bring God or Jesus into these invocations. Matthew 6:6 is asked to do it in public or in private. And since all members of the board cannot follow those rules, I don't wish to do it at all.
I'll say it.
Okay?
I pledge allegiance.
That's different. So we can't do the pledge now.
And for the pledge, yes. You can sit down if you wish.
That's not sitting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
I just want to add one thing to Mr. Martz's comment. He is of course completely free to offer an invocation or not, and everybody should certainly respect that. But our town attorney has given us very detailed instructions on what's permissible and what is not permissible in the way of a so-called prayer. And I think if you just refer to his writings, that would carry anybody through. So,
That would be correct, except for since the town attorney has given us those directions, twice we have had people not do that, not follow those directions.
well, they should be following those directions.
Oh, I'm aware.
You want to jump up and say something then?
We're waiting on Toby to come back. He's going to give us an announcement. We have, come on in, Mr. Cordick, will you? You're on.
I'm going to move this down so you and I can chat, okay? Brady Crow. Hi,
Hello, I'm Brady Crow.
I'm Toby Kordick, Town Manager. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I'm working on my interviewing skills. I'll practice a little bit. So Brady, we got the word on Friday that you did a pretty good thing for the community. Does that sound like am I starting to get the picture right here? Okay. And that you helped raise some money. You heard about our K-9 program, right?
Yes, I did.
Where'd you hear about that?
Well, I just heard that McCandless Police, they wanted to get a K-9 unit, and I thought that'd be a great way to help make McCandless better.
So, and you heard that we could probably use some money to help pay for that program, and people are starting to work on donations. Where'd you get the idea for the way you did your fundraiser?
Well, first off, this is a Pebble Pow. They are fun little rocks that were originated when I was in Hozak. I was in the Gold class, and our project was to create a homemade business, and we sell it to the other Gold students with play money. I made 90 of these Pebble Pows, and I sold them, and I completely sold out. And when I heard about this, I thought it'd be a great way to just raise some money, and I thought that if people were willing to pay, were willing to donate for the K-9 unit, they'd be willing to get a Pebble Pow in the makings. So I just raised money by selling these little Pebble Pows.
And where did you do this?
I did this at McCandless Day.
You like Community Day?
Yes.
Do you think you helped make it more fun?
I think I did. I saw some kids get them, and I think that made them happy, so that was good.
Way to go, Brady. How much money you have in that envelope, do you know?
I have $321.50.
Why don't you go see the chief?
Brady Crow, it is an honor and a privilege, and you touched my heart with what you did to be recognized with the McCandless Police Good Citizens Award here tonight. I want to thank you because you've gone the extra mile to do something nice for us in law enforcement in our canine program. You're quite a fine communicator, too. And you've brought joy to my heart and joy to the community. And our dog's name is Joy. So Joy's jumping for joy as is being trained right now. And it's a special moment for me to present this award to you. You're a fine young man, and I wish you well in all you do. On behalf of the McCandless Police, thank you, young man. You touched my heart. Take care. We lost the quarter.
We have Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad, would you like to have how about a photo with the chief and Brady? We have the paparazzi here tonight.
Thank you, Brady. That was a nice gesture. And maybe after the chief gets a dog and out here, we'll invite you down to see him. We're moving right along to item number 5. Is a public hearing on an ordinance tentatively identified as ordinance number 1467. An ordinance amending ordinance number 704, proposing to change the zoning districts of properties located at 976 East Arcadia Drive and 9399 Babcock Boulevard from zoning district I institutional and R2 1 and 2 family residential to R6 elderly housing district, and amending the town zoning map accordingly. This rezoning request would facilitate the construction of 2 buildings linked together containing 90 independent living apartments with various indoor and outdoor amenities. This public hearing will be reviewed at Town Council's Zoning Committee meeting of October 9th, 2017, and is scheduled for a vote by Town Council, and it's at its October 23rd, 2017, regular business meeting.
We're blinding you, huh, Jerry?
I can't see. Okay, I could read.
A couple of things, administrative announcements about this hearing. This was publicized in accordance with the municipality's planning code, and it was also posted in accordance with Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. And letters were sent to adjoining neighbors in accordance with the municipality's planning code and town code. And we sent letters to a couple of additional people who I know who have been impacted by stormwater runoff by the previous building, the previous user, Regency. So the reason that this is a rezoning proposal. And the reason for the rezoning proposal is that this is independent living. It is for senior housing for independent living. This zoning district that it's in now, which is institutional and residential, does not permit that. Regency was a nursing home, and it was a little bit non-conforming because 2 parts of that parcels, 2 parts of those parcels were residential, and 1 part was institutional. So this will unify the 2 parcels with a subdivision, it's proposed, and this will also rezone it to R6 if it is voted favorably upon. And then the difference is that the R6 only permits uses related to senior housing and senior living. So that's a big change, proposed to be a big change. Institutional allows a lot of other uses, including hospitals and towers and things like that. So this is I'm viewing this as a positive change, and also looking at some positives that might come of this. For example, stormwater management, which doesn't exist in totality there now. So those are some of the things, and we have with us tonight representing Vincentian Collaborative, Nick Vizaka, Nathan Doherty, and the architect Edgar Smith, Rocco Mangino, Magrino, and David Morse from Morse Associates, the engineering firm. So at this point, it looks like Nick has the pointer, so I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Council. As Bruce said, we're looking to rezone this from 2 lots into 1. Just a brief history for those of you who don't know. Vincentian's been part of the McCandless community since 1924. We aren't going anywhere. We'd like to make that another 100 years. And our goal is to make sure that what we develop on this land as we move forward fits the needs of the aging population, but more importantly, fits into what McCandless is doing in their future expansion and with the neighbors around there. We want to be very aware of what the neighbors' input is. And just so council knows, we have held at least 2 meetings with the neighbors to get their input and get their feedback and keep them in the loop and full transparency. As Bruce said, in 1965, the original Regency was built on this site. At the time, it was a nursing home, 134 beds. 277 employees at any given time on that site. It's been closed now for 4 years, and that lot's been sitting vacant. So for us, it's about developing that and bringing it back to life. But more importantly, what are the needs? Times have changed. 1965 to 2017, the way we care for seniors has changed greatly. So what we feel is the most appropriate is that senior housing and allow these folks to age in place. Currently, as you see, Lot 1, that's the residential lot. We had 2 of our sisters living on that lot until it was burned down, actually, by McCandless and several other neighboring fire departments in a training exercise. Lot 2 is where the original Regency sat. Again, the plan is to combine it all, and as Bruce indicated, currently, the lot where Regency sat on was zoned institutional. The one on the other side was zoned residential. If you notice where the R2 and it says 1 and 2 family residential, that's not usable. That's just an extension of that lot. If anybody lives there, you know it goes down onto Babcock. There's a lot of vegetation there. It's really the rectangular one that's the usable part. And the little notch, we had this question, I think, before. If you notice, I'll point to it here. So this little notch right here, we were asked, why doesn't this go this way? That's a utility. That's Duquesne Light. That's not part of our property. We don't have any ownership over that. There's actually a box there, a big utility box. So again, the goal is to that entire, those 3 lots, essentially into the 1 elderly housing residential. That's the goal. That's what we feel. We could make that look extremely pleasing, and it's what we need, I think, in the community. I live out here in the North Hills, and I think that the demand is there. We currently operate Vincentian Villas that has 64 units, and we have a waiting list of 49 names. This year, we've done nothing but put the signs up outside. We have a waiting list of 245 people. That's individual names, so essentially 490 individuals that want to live here. So this is why I say we meet with the neighbors and we meet with them to hear what they really want, because it's going to be here for the next 100 years, and we want to make sure it fits into the community. As I've said to several folks, this is essentially the entrance to North Park when you go down to Coomer, and we want to keep it park-like, and that's our goal. This is proposed. I just give everybody an idea of what the building and what it'll look like, and I'll let Nathan jump in at any time. But as Bruce said, we're gonna address the stormwater issue, and I'll let Nathan talk a little bit about that.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nathan Doherty. I want to jump back a step. When it was the Regency nursing home, and it sat vacant for a few years. Obviously, we were working on a plan, what would be the right fit for the property. And as Nick had mentioned, senior housing, it's very important. It's a continuation of our sister's mission. We work under a very strict vision of what the sisters want to accomplish, and it all centers around the care for the elderly. So this is sort of the early inception of bringing people towards our system of elderly care. And we're fortunate that there's actually a zoning situation that supports this. I hate to call it elderly housing, but it's senior housing. Independent living is a growing trend. There's a huge demand for it. I've seen studies where they flip-flop between Dade County, Florida being number one in the number of seniors, and Allegheny County being number two. So, and sometimes it's flipped the other way. But there's a lot of seniors in the area. Nick had mentioned the waiting list, the number of people who are just interested because we put signs on the property. We want to meet those needs. We want to have another area of good neighbors. Our Villa project up the road on Babcock is a great success. If you know anyone who lives there or get to meet anyone who lived there, they have their own little community. People came from, this nearby North Hills areas, and they're tight. I mean, they're a nice little group of people. They do their own thing, and I think adding more of that to this area is a boon. That's a blessing for what we want to do. So. When it came time to tear down Regency, I oversaw the demolition of it. I made sure that we had all the appropriate permitting. I mean, obviously, a building of the 1960s vintage had asbestos. The asbestos was properly abated. We have documentation that it was all removed from site. There was air monitoring done that met EPA guidelines. So the site is clean. It's a very nice, attractive site. I stop by a couple times a week, make sure the grass is being cut. Tonight, all the geese are up there. See the deer, the two fawn, and the doe. So it's a very attractive site. And what we want to do, and as Bruce had mentioned too, we want to improve upon the amenities that are there. There's never really been a good stormwater program, and we recognize that. In the meetings that we've had with the neighbors, we've listened. I've seen pictures of the stormwater running through the people's yards. I know where the water flows to. I know how we contribute, how the neighbors contribute, and we're willing to do more than our share to control that. And I know through just basic permitting, when you do construction nowadays, that's required. You have to meet those requirements. But we want it to be done right, we want it to be done well, and we want to be a good neighbor to those people that are adversely impacted by the water. So what we proposed here, just to orient everybody, Babcock coming up from the bottom at an angle. Thanks. Where are we here? Okay, here's Babcock, here's Coomer, and then the northern side here is the East Arcadia Alley, and then this is Aldenford on the west. So if everybody knows the direction we're looking, what we want to do is we want to have a nice, attractive building that fits into the neighborhood, something that you'll drive by, and it'll stand out because it's new and it's exciting, but it won't stand out because it's an eyesore. It's going to be, as the architects say, a vernacular building. Did I get that right? I pick up a little bit by hanging out with these guys. I won't get too far ahead. I'll get myself in a hole. But we want it to be something that everyone is proud to live around, live at. And part of that is really screening it from the exposures of the neighbors. We don't want you to be looking out at a big building that just sort of appeared in the course of a year. So what we are proposing is a substantial buffer up here along the northern edge, and that consists of a raised dirt mound. I believe it's, and we have a cutaway here, a profile view of it. That's a 4-foot-high mound with vegetation on top of it. Now, fortunately for us, the site right now contains quite a lot of mature trees up here. I've already been on site with an arborist, a really nice young lady who I was really into her passion for trees. We ran around the site for a couple hours, and she was happy she didn't get a tick. She was worried about that. But we identified every tree, and I said, I want to save every tree here that we can. And there was only a few diseased trees and maybe a dead pine that's coming down. There were trees that I thought couldn't be saved, and she said, no, we can trim them up, and they'll be viable trees again. So that's what we want to do, maintain that green space, that vegetation. That also serves as a natural barrier between us and our neighbors. You need your privacy, we need ours. We want to maintain that. We want to be the good neighbor. So we're taking a lot of steps to preserve that. So that's the buffer yard. And again, this is what the profile would look like. And again, that 4-foot height, that screens the headlights from cars as they would approach a parking space or drive onto the site. That would effectively block all that light at night. Now, the nice thing about this building is set back approximately 90 feet from the property line. So there's a good bit at least 90 feet or more. And the same with the distance from Coomer. We want to keep that property pulled back away to be mindful of the people who live on the other side of the road. And then again, we're real lucky because it's really wooded down here and along the Aldenford side. But whatever it takes, we do have plans to fill in some of this vegetation, some of these pretty little green trees here, new additions. And then in addition, we have our own landscaping, which I think is very robust throughout the site, just to complement that green space, preserve that park-like setting. As Nick likes to say, that's right at the top of the hill as you start down into North Park, down Coomer Road. So we want to be an extension of that. Give the residents an opportunity who live there to walk the site, enjoy the scenery, play with the geese, the deer, the antelope, that kind of thing. And so another big issue, which I mentioned before, was the stormwater. So one of our big features here, we put a lot of effort into this, is the pond. Now, this pond isn't just a drainage pond. Yes, ma'am. You want to go swimming? Okay. Feel free to jump in, literally. No, just kidding. Yeah. So I meant jump in the pond.
Took me a minute.
Yeah. So the pond is actually not only going to be very pretty, but it's a very useful feature. I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about the pond. I'm going to ask Rocco to fill in on the pond and how it works, and also address the drainage from the different points on the property. That's really his area of expertise.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
We attacked the stormwater management in essentially 3 phases. As it exists right now, there are 4 drainage areas on the site. We've annotated them as the point of interest 1, which drains to Babcock, point of interest 2, which drains to the south, which we're having the most concern with the neighbors who are down more south on Babcock. We have point of interest 3, which drains to East Arcadia, and point of interest 4. And we analyze those, each of them, to make sure that we're not only meeting the existing rate, but also bettering the existing rate. And we've done that in essentially 3 ways. The first way we've done it is there have been, obviously in the past, existing impervious there in terms of the building, Regency, parking lots. When we look at the existing stormwater leaving the site versus the proposed, we assume the existing, because that's the township ordinances, to match existing versus proposed. We basically went back to a meadow. So if you were to look at simply with that criterion, the point of interest around the site would receive flow as if there was nothing there but a meadow. So that's our first betterment, if you will. Our second betterment is that we've actually changed the drainage areas, most notably to our point of interest 2, which goes down to the south of Babcock. That creates a natural ravine right through this area, which collects water, channelizes it, and discharges it in the rear of the homes that are down on Babcock Boulevard there. Excuse me. What we've done is we've created this surface swale. And that surface swale collects all the drainage that will run from the site, and we've directed all the roof drains back to it. We've directed all the parking lot to it. We've directed this entire parking lot to the pond as well. But this drainage swale is a surface water, so when it rains, that water is going to be collected in this swale, drained down into the pond, and be metered. Now that pond will meter out the total flow onto Babcock Boulevard there, where it currently discharges. That'll be via a level spreader. Kind of a technical term for just, instead of like a water jet you would see coming out of a pipe, it's a nice laminar flow. And that's something we're really looking forward to. But in addition to surface water, one of the concerns that we have at the rear of the property is there's a lot of saturation. There is a spring back there. There's a lot of water where it's always kind of soppy and wet. And what that does is that really takes away the capacity, the natural capacity of the soil to absorb water during a rainstorm. So what we've done is below this swale is a 6-foot deep gravel trench with a pipe at the bottom that acts as a subsurface cutoff trench, so that, you know, we basically have all these little springs and fissures that come up through the ground there and percolate water down through this area. It saturates it, and then when a big rainstorm happens, there's no capacity within the soil to kind of have that first flush, that first half inch, and we get large rainstorms. So we've accommodated that by placing, as I said, this large underdrain facility, which is actually 6 foot deep, 2 foot wide, gravel underdrain with a pipe at the bottom that will also discharge into the pond. So we're removing the surface water. We're taking all the calculations back to as if it was meadow. We are then also removing the subsurface water and doing everything we can do to alleviate the drainage in this particular area. The drainage divide right now is approximately 2.5 acres with a substantial amount of impervious surface from the Regency facility. We're knocking that back to about an acre or less, and that's all going to be meadow. There may be a small pavilion out here, but that'll also go to a small gravel drainage pit or something like that. But our intention is to reduce the flow to this drainage area substantially. And that's basically everything we can do within our power to better the stormwater situation for those folks just south on Babcock.
Make sure you cover the northern discharge too.
Absolutely. So point of interest number 3 is up here in this corner. Now that drains to a small culvert that's installed underneath East Arcadia. That drainage area right now is it's 1.4 acres. Excuse me, it's 2.5 acres as it stands right now. We'll be reducing that to 1.4 acres. So, almost cutting over an acre off of that drainage area, reducing the flow, and also from a rather impervious building, parking, asphalt that drains to it, we're going to remove that, and it's going to seem as if it's meadow. And that's by the use of these bioretention facilities that will capture, treat, filter, and discharge the water more slowly during rain events. And that happens periodically during the site over here as well. We have a small rain garden here as well. This is the smallest drainage area. Point of interest 4 originally drains about 0.9 acres, and we're going to knock that back to almost 0.4 acres. So over half of the flow that had been coming off at this location will be coming off. And that's just necessary to get around our berm there.
Mention that shelf on the pond. So
Very
it's a
good point.
safety feature.
The design of the pond, which Nathan got into, is designed very methodically. We have this pond designed so it's actually 3-to-1 sides, which is essentially very mowable if you're going along it in a lawn tractor. So it's not overly steep. So it's very safe. Secondly, we have 2 benches in there. And a bench is just a flat spot. So first we have what's called a safety bench. And that safety bench is if anyone should ever slide down that slope, again, it's only 3-to-1, which is pretty shallow, there's a 10-foot wide bench that they can recover, stop, I don't want to go in the water. And after that, we have a continuous 3-to-1 slope, and there's another bench, which is an aquatic bench, which will have some ponding on it, some water, but it's certainly not 3 to 4 feet deep. It'll fluctuate with the storms, but that actually preserves them, any type of ecology, small bugs, things that will kind of make this a living and fostering environment to keep the water as fresh as reasonable. We're also providing a aeration system with, in terms of a fountain, or just want to keep this. We want to make this an amenity, is what we really turned it out to be. So much effort, and literally so much of our design time of going through and grading out these pocketized wetlands and calculating how the filter is going to work and making sure all this can happen. We want to make this something special because we want to show us civil engineers. We don't just put pipes in the ground. This is one area where we actually really put a lot of thought and design and creativity into this system. We want to make sure it's known and be able to point to it and say, we've done something special here. So the pond is designed to all DEP township standards. The site is designed to all DEP township standards. We've gone above and beyond by redistributing water to alleviate as much flow to the rear of the property here that goes down to Babcock as possible. And we've also accommodated all requirements and knocked back the flow to East Arcadia as well. And the final discharge point for the majority of the water that comes from the majority of the site will be at Babcock to a PennDOT permitted outfall. It's essentially our stormwater in a nutshell.
Great. Thank you, Rocco.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, sir. I'm going to ask Edgar to handle his renderings here.
I know it's, hi, I'm Edgar Smith, I'm the architect. What we've done is we've provided a number of images. There were some questions that were asked about, okay, I'm off the site, I'm looking at the old site of Regency, what am I gonna see? Well, we went through and modeled all the sides of this property. And this is looking, that's Arcadia, this is looking down Coomer, this is looking towards the corner there. There's a lot of, in every one of these images, this image right here, I think, I apologize, that's north. This is Arcadia northeast. You can see the berm and some trees on top. This is Arcadia west. This is looking on one of the properties almost to the residential portion way on the far west side, looking at the berm. Almost all of these vignettes, you're going to see a lot of trees during the summer months, and very little of the structure beyond. Do you have the clicker? This image right here is Babcock entrance. You can see some of the roof line beyond. This is also a hill, right? There's a portion of the property that actually raises above Coomer and Babcock, so you do get a little bit of we had a little bit of a hill, and that's one of the problems we had with the stormwater. The west property, this is looking across the street to, from Eldenford. Again, we're trying to almost create a fence of trees for the most part throughout this property. In the last image, I think we're showing Coomer Road again. Go ahead and switch to the next one. So it may be difficult, but we pulled some images just from Google. You can see a number of these images to see some of the existing trees. As Nate said, they spent a lot of time identifying trees that they wanted to keep. So the majority of these, the majority of the property, so this is Arcadia, there's a number of trees, you can already see it's pretty overgrown. Babcock entrance, this is the existing building that was there, the Regency, before it was demolished. That's looking north on Babcock towards Coomer Road. Some of these existing trees are all going to stay. Thanks, Bruce. Go ahead and switch to the next slide there. This is looking across the street from approximately the property of our neighbor here. There are obviously telephone poles and other structures, but mostly what we see is the overgrown trees. And obviously, we're going to spend some time making sure that they're pruned and taken care of. And fill in for sure. Why don't you go to the next slide there? We wanted to give an image of kind of the direction the design is going. This right now is the view east. So if we go back to the plan, I'm going to show you guys where we're looking from. So we're looking from approximately here, this direction. So this portion of the building is the main entrance. These are all residences, and there's residences above that main entrance. That main entrance has the basically the entrance to a lobby and some multi-purpose rooms and spaces that the facility will use for the people that live here. And we are at a 3-story structure with a pitched roof. I think the height of the eave here is approximately 36 feet. So we've actually, I think some folks were asking before about the heights. This is actually lower than it's been in the past. And I think the high point, typically when you take the height, you take a mean height, but I think this is below 47 or 48 feet. We are, we have a large entry here that has a little bit of a canopy and some signage that says, right now we call it Terrace Place. And then all these little windows and little fenestration here, they have a little bit of balconies. You have little windows that, from this image, that has a bedroom beyond it. This is a close-up view of that front entry right now, a concept view that shows what those units would look like. So we have our balconies and our windows. So basically every unit would have a living space and then a bedroom space right adjacent to it. And in terms of the colors and materiality, we're trying to make sure that we have something that stands the test of time, that we don't have to go back and paint in 5 years, but really stands up to the wear and tear of northwestern or western Pennsylvania's winters. I think that's it.
So I think to summarize, I think one of the things that we heard and a lot from the neighbors and from the, prospective residents here was, the look, the height, the stormwater, the safety. And again, I think we wanted to address all of that, obviously for many reasons, but, as I've said, I think probably 100 times, when we look at the development at what's going on around us in the North Hills there, McCandless Crossing, we also thought, what better way to incorporate this independent housing and allow potentially 180 residents to be able to utilize all those beautiful amenities that you all work so hard to get approved at McCandless Crossing. And I think these folks will be able to do that. And I think we're proud of that. And like I said, I think the last thing we wanted or we felt we needed was another medical office building. I can guarantee you we were approached by many. I think we all know who that is, UPMC and their competitors wanting the site and many retailers. But we felt with the neighbors around there and what we were trying to accomplish and be a good neighbor that what was best for that site was residents. So thank you very much. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, Bruce.
Just a couple of follow-up comments,
Yeah.
if I may. For those of you who were at the Planning Commission meeting or will read the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting, this building is different than what was proposed or suggested at the Planning Commission meeting. This is a concept plan. That is all that's required for rezoning. It isn't a site plan submittal. That will follow. So all the detailed work that Rocco did on the stormwater will be reviewed if this gets approved. There will be another set of meetings to follow up on this. So, but this is only a concept plan at this time. For those of you who are at the Planning Commission, this is a different building. It does address some of the concerns that the neighbors had about the building height. The building was previously 4 stories, and they were able to reduce it to 3 stories. And there are a few other reasons that they came up with this building design. But I wanted to point out that this is a concept plan. It is not a site plan. If it gets approved for the rezoning, there will be a detailed site plan to follow.
We're done with that.
Anyone on council have any questions of these gentlemen?
I would like to know how deep the pond is.
Pond is approximately 8 feet deep. It'll probably be about 4 feet deep of permanent water there to make sure it remains fully, an area, an ecosystem. But at total, it's about 8 feet deep.
And does it have a fence around it?
It does not have a fence around it. We provided the minimum, a reduced slope into the pond of 3 to 1. I believe that all that's required would be 2 to 1, which is significantly steeper. So we've actually dedicated more land use area to a less steep pond and provided 2 safety benches that we thought would be more than adequate for a pond of that size.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, though, don't we have something in our code, not necessarily as a zoning code, but anything over 2 feet requires a fence?
I think what you're referring to is swimming areas. This is not a swimming area. Our detention facilities in the town of McCandless do not require fences around them. And I believe the concept here is that it is open to the residents that live there, and so that they have unabated view toward the facility. And our requirement actually, we will have to discuss the slope requirements that we have there, but they are providing the bench at, I believe, at a 4-foot, 3 and 4 foot levels.
Correct.
And so they do have the safety bench there, and the safety bench is 10. So there is, it would take a lot for someone to go beyond that 3-foot depth. They'd have to get in it and then get out, and that 8-foot depth is the maximum depth at the 100-year storm, and that drains. That'll be drained in less than a 12-hour period.
Correct.
So this is the maximum that,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yes. It's not intended to be 8 feet deep at all.
So it's not the day-to-day,
No,
Yeah,
four,
that's correct.
4 feet. Yeah.
Correct. So today would be very low, be about 4 feet, to be aerated with a small fountain in the middle, kind of aerating the pond there to keep it, fresh water, if you will, and then during times of high rain events, it'll elevate based upon how much rain we get, with a maximum ponding of about 8 feet.
Will the filtration run through the bed of the pond itself into the plant bed?
We're actually going to place the filtration, depending on which type of product we select for the aeration. It'll run just above it, so we don't collect sediment up into the pump. So it'll probably sit to one side of the pond based upon where the outlet, which is closest to Babcock, and it'll probably pick up water about 1.5 feet off the bottom, about 1 to 1.5 feet.
So it's not going to run tubes actually in a gravel bed underneath plants?
That's not currently the design. However, I must say that we're still working through that design right now.
The East Arcadia is on the plan. Is that going to be usable now?
Mr. Theobald, East Arcadia will remain private. That was a concern that was brought up. East Arcadia at this point is a private road, and it will remain a private road at this point.
So there's an awful lot of buffering going in there for one family.
Probably 3 families. I think there are 3 families there. And the concern was that and actually it's around everybody. It's lights, mostly for the lights, is the reason for the berm part of it.
Anyone else have questions? I have a question. How thoroughly have you investigated the runoff on Babcock Boulevard?
We've identified the current state, and we're proposing to reduce that. So basically, we're doing it will discharge from the site as if that site was meadow. So we'll better the existing runoff at Babcock Boulevard.
Well, where does it go when it runs off?
There is a defined channel there in the curb and gutter. There's a gutter that starts right at that corner, right where we discharge to. It's a defined shoulder of PennDOT. It runs down Babcock, and then there's an inlet at the next intersection.
An inlet to go,
An inlet to go into the municipal storm system, sir.
municipal storms?
There's a storm system there. There's a storm inlet at the corner.
Ultimately, it will cross Babcock, go into Sisters of Divine Providence Pond, and then I don't know that it all goes into Divine Providence. It may end up down at La Roche's pond as opposed to Divine Providence. I'm not sure where that discharges exactly, but that will be part of the site plan review and part of our stormwater engineering review.
Yeah, we have to look at that carefully.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and it has to meet PennDOT requirements. There was an HOP, which would be required, a highway occupancy permit, sorry to use the lingo, but there is a highway occupancy permit that will be required, and the requirements for PennDOT is that there be 0 increase in runoff.
You know, we have some critical areas down below that.
We certainly do, and that's an important question, and that's, we had talked about that at the Planning Commission meeting also, so that's a very important question that will be addressed as a site plan concern.
The other thing, the building's going to be sprinkled, I presume.
It will be a sprinklered building.
Anyone else have any questions?
This being an independent living situation, am I to believe there will be no medical facilities or personnel on site? Is that correct?
That's correct. At any given time in the future, what we've done, we've carved out a small 140 square foot room that's used as an office conference room in case we decide somewhere down the road 5 years from now to have a physician there 1 day a week for a couple hours. But right now, there's no medical planned at all. We have Passivant right across the street, which we're extremely fortunate, so we didn't want to duplicate services.
If someone has occasion to have a need for medical services, how is that to be accomplished? I take it from what you just said that they would go over to the Passivant Hospital area?
Depending on the need, what they needed,
yeah.
yes. And currently, I mean, we will have a shuttle run there just like we do at the villas, and we've had where we've taken residents to the emergency room, but in most cases, it's going to be an ambulance run if it's that severe, or they'll take themselves right across the road. I think one thing I just wanted to point out too before I forget, and Bruce and I have talked about this, I know there's there's a desire to have the sidewalk, the walking trail. We have committed to put the sidewalk in front of our property so that whenever McCandless does decide, if it does make sense to connect, ours will already be there. We'll do that now as we build.
That's great.
Well, obviously, since they're going to be aging in place, they would have, even though it's independent housing, they could bring themselves a nurse's aide or nurse, to check them out.
Yes, and
Right.
we have that currently at the villas, I think. So I think one of the surprising things, and some of you may know or may not know, is the average age in our villas currently is 86.4 years, and they live independently. We just had a 98-year-old female move in independent. So yes, as they age, there may be a need for someone to check on them. Doesn't happen too often, even in the villas, but it could come up. Yes, that's the plan.
Yeah.
The sidewalk will only be on the Babcock and Coomer side.
Correct, in front of the property. I think it's a great thing if it can work the whole way. I mean, it's a lot of
I
our.
didn't know if there was a way
Yeah.
to get it back to Arcadia,
Oh.
the main section.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to do that.
Anyone else on council have any questions? Any comments from anyone in the audience?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Please come up and identify.
Just come up and identify yourself.
Sorry.
Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Russ Stitt. I own a piece of property further down Babcock Boulevard before Cumberland. It's on a private road. When you talk about excess water flow coming onto Babcock and the sewer system handling that, with the change in the weather patterns and the excessive rain, does PennDOT provide like a flow test that it's not running onto Babcock Boulevard in wintertime because that's a very heavily traveled road?
So right now, there's a discharge, it's a pipe that discharges there, and actually there's also a culvert that comes across underneath the entrance. What we're proposing is that from that point, from the property, from Vincenzo's property, there will not only be no net increase, but there will actually be a decrease to that point. So there's a decrease in the amount of water going down the gutter on Babcock.
How do you measure that, though?
Well, not to get very technical, but there's IDF rain curves that are published by NOAA.
Okay.
That identify, and we go through the calculations that'll be reviewed by the township that show there's not only no increase, but a decrease. Again, taking that back to a meadow. So there will be a decrease at that point of interest. And not only is there a decrease, but instead of channelizing that water, we will allow it to spread out, which is a very nice laminar flow. So it won't shoot across Babcock. It will simply go into the gutter pan, trickle down, and continue on. Again, the pond is meant to retain those large flows.
Right.
And then discharge it over a long period of time to alleviate overburdening the systems as much as possible.
Okay.
That is 100% water. That's 100% release rate watershed, though, just to be accurate.
Okay, great.
Russ,
thank
what's
you.
your address again?
It's 9137, 9139 Babcock Boulevard.
Thank
But
you.
it's a private road that accesses off of Babcock before you hit Cumberland. And there's 4 homes up in that property.
Okay.
Is there any other comments from anyone in the audience? Rita? Come up and identify yourself.
It's Rita Martin, Grubbs Road. I just want to thank you for such a clear and detailed presentation, your effort to contact citizens, and your attention to flora, fauna, and everything. It's the best presentation I've ever seen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from anyone in the audience?
Yeah, I wanted to compliment you as well. It looks
Identify
like a
yourself.
very nice design. My name's Deborah Sagan, and I live on Parkland Drive. Sorry, I should know that by now. It is a very nice design, and I'm glad to see something going in there. And I applaud your effort to contact the neighbors, and I know that they're here tonight, it seems. That was my question. What do the neighbors say? Because that Arcadia alley is very private. So I was curious as to that. And thank you again for attention to the residents by providing sidewalks. That's very important as well. But my question is, and to council comment, I don't know if we can address this tonight, but that is a very busy intersection, as I'm sure all of you know, Coomer, Babcock, and I don't know how many more cars you're expecting with residents to have, since they'll be residing there. I'm expecting that they might have one, maybe two cars.
So I will
Okay,
address
it looks
that.
like you're ready for the
Yep,
answer.
right, because I think one of the things that we wanted to be very mindful of is to not overbuild something in terms of parking and other things. So we've
Right.
talked to a lot of our competitors around here and even in the whole state. And I will say we have 64 units currently at the villas. We have, in our apartment, we have about 25 parking spots. There's 3 cars. So what we've seen is a decrease in the number of cars once the folks age. We've also contacted Zipcar to have a Zipcar on site for those residents that do want to use a car and take them anywhere they want to go. We've also been in contact with Uber to provide that. So as I said, when it was running as Regency, it was 277 employees. We'll have 3 here. So
Oh, well, that'll cut back. on
right, so
some.
that'll cut back on that. So I think that we're extremely mindful. I agree, I drive that every day.
too.
That's an extremely busy intersection. The last thing we wanted to do was put something there that would just congest it even more.
Okay. So the driveways, to me, on the drawing appeared to be similar to what they were for the
Yes.
other buildings. So you're proposing then that traffic will decrease, or the flow of traffic coming in and out, do you think?
Yeah, we actually did a not a study, but we did an analysis
Observation.
based upon the use of the previous Vincentian property or
Okay.
the Regency and the proposed. And we have about a 30 to 40% reduction, depending on you're looking at total AM peak, PM peak. So there is a substantial reduction.
Great. Oh, that's good to know, too. Just make sure I covered everything. I think that's it. And, well, aging in place is a great idea, and I'm thinking, when I did hear the pond, nobody knows that I lobby for pools and swimming, so you might want to think about recreation of that sort there, or even bike paths, you know,
Yes,
and
so the-
bicycle, at least
yes.
a place to park your bike.
There'll definitely be all of that.
Yeah, and that's
Interestingly,
the ancillary.
yeah.
Thank
No, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments from the audience? Hearing none, I'll move for a motion to close this public hearing. Someone will make that
I
motion?
move to close the hearing.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Question on the motion. All those in favor of closing the public hearing indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. This hearing is closed. We move into public hearing on an ordinance tentatively identified as ordinance number 1468. An ordinance establishing a volunteer fire service credit program, authorizing local tax credits for members of active volunteer fire companies, and establishing administrative procedures and appeals. The ordinance will be voted on at Town Council's reconvened regular business meeting, intended to be rescheduled for October 9th, 2017, which is to reconvene at 7:30 p.m. at Town Hall. Now, Town Manager Toby was at the COG meetings for all of this, so he's going to present the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. President. The state legislature recognized that our volunteer fire service is invaluable, and they put this legislation together, which took effect on January 20th of this year. The goal of the program is to encourage membership and service in the community's volunteer fire companies and demonstrate appreciation by the town for this service. And those are our words, but those words embrace what the state legislature had in mind. The act authorizes municipalities to give a tax credit to volunteer firefighters and emergency service personnel that are volunteers for the municipal portion of the earned income tax and or 20% of the local real estate tax. In February, our Council of Governments in the North Hills managers meeting, we discussed a regional form of implementation and regional standards. because the Act requires that there be standards to determine what a volunteer actually is required to do to achieve the credit level status. This was followed by the creation of a Council of Governments Fire Chiefs Committee, and the Fire Chief's first task was to provide input and recommend a COG-wide set of requirements for active volunteer firefighters under this program, as certified by the Volunteer Fire Company Fire Chief. Simultaneously, we awaited word from the State Fire Marshal's Office and state associations who were tasked by the state legislature to provide guidance on this. By July, the COG Fire Chiefs recommended a level of 50 hours, that's 50, annual service, whether it's firefighting, administrative, or fundraiser activity, or facility or equipment management, and an earned income tax credit of up to $300 per person. The Managers Committee, right on the heels of the Fire Chief's recommendation, concurred with recommendations and gave those to the Council of Governments Executive Board. The Council of Governments is comprised of 19 municipalities. One elected official per municipality sits on that board. So they concurred with the recommendation of the chiefs and the managers. The North Hills Council of Governments solicitor was then tasked to draft a model ordinance for all of us in the Council of Governments here in the North Hills to use to establish the program and to have administrative procedures for it. This ordinance is accompanied by a resolution which lays out the number of credits and the criteria, fairly brief and to the point. For the inaugural year, it's 37 hours because the inaugural year is going to be a short year. The act didn't take effect until January 20th, and to get it kicked off this year and try to get it completed here in time by the end of this year and have information sent to our tax collector, Keystone. We worked hard here in the last 6 weeks or so to finalize the ordinance and came up with the idea that we should have 37 hours for the first year, the shorter year, but the same level of credit, same level of a tax credit. And then each year, a 50-hour service requirement. Firefighters would keep their own records on a form, and the annual term will be from November 1st through October 31st, so that we can allow, under the state law, turnaround by the fire chiefs who will get the information from their members by November 5th, and the chiefs then are required by the state law to get the information to the town or municipalities, because in general municipalities, November 15th. The state decided that we needed that much time to consider this. Frankly, I'll make an editorial comment. I think we could have probably had a little less time and given the fire departments a little more, but in order to comply with the state law, we have to have that information by the 15th of November. And then town council does have to take action to certify the list that we're given, and it's sent to the tax collector so that the collector has it by December 31st for returns that start to come in early January. Each municipality had the ability to reject the Council of Governments requirement, or not a requirement, a recommendation of $300. As far as I know, the municipalities that have spoken back a couple of weeks ago at the most recent Council of Governments managers meeting are staying with the $300 credit. And the $300 credit, our town council, after going over this in committee earlier in the month and last month, decided to advertise the ordinance with a maximum of $500 to be our credit for the earned income tax. I'm not aware of any municipality within the North Hills that is offering a credit toward the real estate tax, because once again, that's 20% of the local tax, and that tax is usually fairly small, especially in comparison to school taxes. So if a house was assessed at $100,000, the tax, 20% of that tax based on our millage would be about $40-some. So it's kind of de minimis. So the idea was to focus and concentrate on the earned income tax. So that our ordinance is based. I've given a summary of it. Our ordinance is based again on the state law and these recommendations. And I'm the chairman of the Tax Collection Committee in the North Hills, And we've worked hard in that area with Keystone Collections for them to have the program in place. Their computer system is all ready to go to accept this tax credit for those who choose to implement it. There are a couple of communities in the North Hills that are going to use some sort of other reward system, but it appears that most are going to use this system that the state legislature put into effect. And that's my summary, sir.
Okay. Anyone on council have any questions? Anyone in the audience have any comments?
Mr. President, I'm sorry I was a little late with my comment, but I think it's this type of a reward for our volunteer services, both fire and EMS, is long overdue. I congratulate the municipalities and the state government for recognizing this and helping the volunteer, at least in the amount that they already have, in as much in view of the fact that volunteerism is a valuable commodity, and I think the firemen and the EMS volunteers are well deserving of any relief they could be given. Thank you.
Anyone in the audience have any comments?
Yes.
Russ?
Again, my name is Russ Stitt. I'm a volunteer representative of People's District Volunteer Fire Department. I'm retired. I serve on the administrative side of the People's Fire Department. I applaud Ralph's comments on the volunteerism of the fire department, of the 3 fire departments in the town of McCandless. I am retired, and of course I know I don't pay any earned income tax, to the town of McCandless because I'm retired. But is there a possibility to have either or for the real estate tax credit? Now, the real estate tax credit, based upon my resident, probably only amounts to $80, which is not great. But is there a possibility of doing something for the volunteer firemen, of increasing that $500 to say like $600? The $60 or $80 doesn't mean a lot to me because I'm retired on my real estate, on the municipal tax, but watching the firemen over the years, the volunteers, the hours they spend training, protecting the community, I think really is overdue for the reward system. We probably really appreciate the $500, but would town council approve bumping that up a little more for the volunteer firemen?
You have to understand, though, that a $500 credit.
Right.
You have
earned income.
The individual has to earn $100,000.
Right. Right.
It's not. He can't combine the income with his spouse.
Right.
So.
Would it be some other monetary reward system that would complement the volunteerism for the fire departments in the growing community in the town of McCandless?
State law doesn't permit anything else or didn't recommend anything else.
Okay. But for those that possibly own property, it's earned income or it's not and?
But the earned income would only be on the municipal side.
Right, right.
That's not the big side that we
That's
pay.
the school
you
district,
don't know.
right, right. But could it be a dual system for
It
earned
could be,
income?
but I think the problem, one of the problems we had is whether if you own the house with your spouse as tenants by entirety,
Right.
whether that would be, how would you handle that? And they don't have any real guidelines as to how you would handle that. So I think Toby's idea was that we would put that off and take another look at it next year maybe.
Okay. Well, I appreciate town council, comment on increasing that from $300 to $500. But again, I'm sure the town really appreciates the volunteerism of the fire departments in the town of McCandless. And of course, as we grow in this community, the fire department becomes more valuable every day for the protection of the residents.
We've always valued the volunteer fire company here.
Right.
We all agree with that.
especially some people that would, we even have some that would like it retroactive for maybe 60 or 70 years or something. Right, Bob? Any other comments? Bob, come up and identify yourself.
My name is Robert Fall, and I'm here on behalf, I'm president of the Inglemoor Fire Department, and I'm here on behalf of our membership. We're located at 9695 Harmony Drive in McCandless. First of all, I want to thank Town Council, and our membership certainly wants me to express our thanks. We recognize the importance of this in that the state did not mandate this. The state did not tell McCandless they had to do this. This is something that the Town Council has done out of the goodness of their heart and out of their recognition. So that means a lot to us because it's something that we're enforced to do. It's going to help our department by not only rewarding the volunteers in service now, it'll be a good recruitment tool when we talk to members of the community. But a third aspect of it, it's going to help us because we do have members who are trained, who have gear, who just fall short of the 50-hour mark. So I think that's going to be incentive to put these trained volunteers, give them more incentive to get up at 2 o'clock on a snowy morning to go to a false alarm at a commercial building. So I think it's going to help bolster the responses to our volunteers. Finally, I want to assure council, Toby had mentioned that the volunteers will keep their time and we have to show 50 hours. Well, we're mandated by the state to report our incidents, and we report them by computer. And those incidents will show the start time, the end time, the members who show up for the calls. So that will be documented. So our accountability, it's not just going to be me telling my chief, hey, I was here for 60 hours, 70 hours. It will be documented not only at the state level. We have meetings once a month. We take attendance. We sign in. We have trainings once a week. The officer in charge notes the start time, the end time, and the members present for those trainings. So we will have very detailed records to support those volunteers who we will come before council to ask for the exemption. And my final comment is I would like to invite council at any time to come out any Tuesday evening. We are at the station every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. The third Tuesday is our business meeting. And you can be welcome to sit in, join, make comments. Certainly welcome at any time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Sean?
Sean O'Brien. I'm the fire chief for Highland Volunteer Fire Department, the third company here in McCandless. And I want to reiterate both comments from the other two departments. Our fire department really appreciates how quickly you did act on this. And along the way, we have expressed our opinions. And just to be perfectly clear, at one of the recent meetings, Councilwoman Zachary, you made a comment about negotiation. We never intended for this to come across as a negotiation for what this tax credit could be or should be. We as a department discussed it ourselves. And the way we valued ourselves was that we felt we could or should be afforded the maximum allowed under the state law. We don't want that to come off as unappreciative by any means. And a negotiation implies both sides have leverage. We don't have leverage in this. We're very thankful. We thank you tonight. And we do really appreciate what you're doing for us. Greg, you made a comment about, given the way that this is set up, you can always look at it in the future and reevaluate it. So I think one of the things I would appreciate any comments from council are part of our process internally is we set goals every year. And I would like to use this as an incentive or as a motivating factor for our members so that if you were to ever reevaluate this, what would you look for us to do for this community beyond what we're doing from a standpoint of responding to calls, attending town community day, public education, such that you may consider affording us the maximum allowed under the state law. And that's what I want to use. Any thoughts you all have so that I can take that back to my members and as part of our 2018 goals, try to get them to bring that out. So a year from now, I can come back to you and say, we did this. We've increased our services as you would like to see. Is this the right time to revisit it? to potentially allow us the maximum allowed as the state allows under the law.
Now, we had initially talked about a gift certificate program instead of, and I was under the impression you guys would rather have had the tax write-off.
That's accurate.
Because the gift certificate program would be easier to fairly give larger amounts to certain people. You know, you could give the full 500 to every person, or you could.
Yeah, we felt, while we wouldn't have declined it had you chosen it, we felt that a gift card wasn't necessarily in the spirit of the state law, and that we felt the optics of it, of you're giving us a tax credit for services rendered to protect the citizens of McCandless.
Right.
And a gift card, psychologically, philosophically, just it felt different. This is not meant to be a bonus. It's meant to be a credit so that the service that I give to this community, I'm refunded my local income taxes. I give my service to run into a burning building in lieu of paying local income taxes. And I think our membership felt that was more in the spirit of what the state legislature was giving us the opportunity, or you the opportunity to adopt, to pass to our department.
And if you got the gift card, you had to pay taxes on it.
The gift card would have also been taxable for federal, state, and local purposes as well. So I don't need necessarily answers tonight, but I would love to be able to take something back to my department for what we could do that might allow you to reconsider in the future, for what we can do to bring more to this community to be afforded the maximum. So I don't need an answer tonight, but I would like to have that dialogue at some time so I could share that with my members.
I certainly don't think that you should have to do any more. You know, I mean, if we can come up with a better way of giving back, that's one, but as far as doing,
Okay.
I feel like you do enough.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Hearing none, then I guess this public hearing is ready to close. I need a motion.
So move.
Second?
Motion is made and been seconded. A question on the motion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Number 7.
Mr. President, move to approve the minutes of council's regular business meeting of August 28, 2017, as submitted to each member of council.
Second, who's second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the minutes. All those in favor of accepting the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We move to report of committees. The Finance Committee, Councilwoman Fires.
Mr. Chairman, I move to ratify check listing number 9, dated August 17th, 2017, through September 14th, 2017, totaling $891,927.08, as submitted to each member of council and as posted on the bulletin board and town website.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? Question on the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt resolution number 16 of the 2017 series, a resolution authorizing the expansion of the types of permitted investments for the temporary investments of town funds in accordance with the Act of March 25th, 2016, PL 72, number 10, entitled Investment of Public Corporation or Authority Funds, Act 10 of 2016, and incorporating this authorization into a policy statement for the temporary investment of town funds.
Second.
Any discussion on question on this? I think you're gonna make a comment on that, are you, Reach?
state legislature governs the investment vehicles permitted to be used by municipalities. And in 2016, the legislature passed Act 10, which expanded the number of investment vehicles and the types that can be utilized by municipalities. So with this resolution, we are both formalizing our investment policy and we're expanding it so that we can take advantage of the other opportunities to earn more interest.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
We have to vote on this one. Any comments? Hearing none? Question on the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. New business.
Every year, we are required, this emerged from an audit many years ago, where one of the field auditors for the Auditor General said that they would like to have municipalities acknowledge the receipt of the minimum municipal obligation for our pension plans. So that's what this is for. We have our police pension plan, which is a defined benefit plan, and a defined contribution plan for public works and administrative employees. And we have a non-uniformed defined benefit plan. It still has two folks that are drawing from it, and upon their demise, that plan will be totally phased out. So the requirements are in that MMO, as it's called, and the copy was attached to the agenda. And should there be any comments or questions, we can answer them or answer them on a follow-up.
Anyone on council have any questions? Anyone in the audience? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, number 10, which is public comment.
Do we need to vote on that?
There's no votes.
No vote. That's just an acknowledgement.
I got you. Thank you.
Public comment, anybody in the audience have a comment?
Commander Matt Shipley, United States Navy SEAL, retired. 230 years ago and 2 Sundays, our founders signed the Constitution and sent it to the states to be ratified by a convention of the states. When 9 states ratified it, it became the law of the land. All 9 states that ratified it with the contention that there had to be a Bill of Rights. The first order of business in our state, our nation, was to ratify a Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was ratified in the first session of Congress, and afterwards, after it was passed, they went down to a church and they prayed. Prayer has been a part of our nation from the beginning. I would like to move that if somebody on this council cannot pray and does not believe in the truth of Christ, that you do not allow them to do so and have somebody who does love Christ and pray in their stead.
Thank you, Matt.
Commander Shipley, I certainly share your sentiments, but I do recognize as a lawyer, and I'm sure our town attorney would back me up on this, that number one, we can't have a compulsory prayer ever. That would be against our Constitution, but I do understand what you're saying, and your personal sentiments and mine would be inclined toward prayer. I've said prayers myself here in council, but we don't want to force people to adopt religious views that are not consistent with their own personal beliefs. That's all I'm saying.
Bill, I respect your opinion. You're absolutely a godly man. Yet, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law establishing religion or respecting or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It does not say anything about separation of state. That came out part as a later 20th century Supreme Court opinion that is faulty. If our founders went and prayed and hired a pastor to come and pray before each session of Congress, it makes no sense. But I understand what you're saying. And I'm not saying that anybody should be compelled to pray. What I'm saying is that if somebody doesn't believe in Christ, they shouldn't be asked to lead the invocation.
I understand.
It's just a comment. It's just a comment.
Anyone
Commander, I thank you profusely for your service, sir. You're a credit to our country and our military. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that has any comments? I'm glad to see you're back, Matt.
I'm grounded for a while.
I see that. Okay.
Number 11.
On to number 11 now. Watch how we make this motion, because it's really, well,
Mr. President, move to adjourn to October 9, 2017 at 7:30 p.m. for the potential adoption of ordinance number 1468 and resolution number 17 of the 2017 series.
is there a second?
Second.
Motion made in a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? For the edification of the audience, that's the amendment, that's what we just went over for the fire companies, so that we can reward them for this year. We're adjourned.
Have a pleasant evening.